The things I will ask you, Leonard, are about a kind of quintessence about your poems, your books, the interviews, and so on.
I'll try.
And one thing that is one fundamental thing in all your works is that you talk about individual transformation, a kind of transfiguration, a kind of changement, individual. But on another way, in other interviews, you are asked about politics, and then you say also that you are not for revolution as such, but for changement. What you really mean with individual changement and political changement?
Well, I don't think that changing the political structure by a violent means is going to have any real effect on society. I think we've seen it now over and over again that it really doesn't change anything. By this I don't mean to say that we should not attempt to modify the structures of society to make them more compatible with
well, what do you mean with
I mean to say is I don't see the point of a war to change
But what is the changement that you propose?
Well, I don't know if I propose anything, but since we're talking about it just man to man, I think that that people can transcend themselves. And this isn't everybody, because most people are okay. It's really only the intellectuals and the bourgeoisie that are grasping and trying for things, you know. The ordinary people will understand that life is work and repetition, and they make their peace with this kind of thing. But there are, the milieu that we hang out in is continually filled with desires. And I think there is a way through personal training to overcome this greed.
But I don't agree with you at that point, because you told it in an article that's written in the book of Robert Hunter, The Stunning of the Mind. Perhaps you know him, he's a Canadian writer. Well, he takes the thing that you say now from the New York Times in '68, and I don't agree, because I tell you there are people now who have changed. I think of Jung, Gustav Jung. I presume you have read Jung. So he has worked with the Nazis.
Did he?
Yes. You know perhaps Martin Heidegger, who died 2 weeks ago. He also has worked with the Nazis. So you see people who are known to have come through a personal change, where it ends.
But I'm talking about our times. With the Nazis, you know, the times change. The times change. In the Nazis, there was only one thing to do, it was resist the Nazis. But today, everybody's a Nazi. Everybody, the Nazi idea has succeeded.
What do you mean? Everybody is a Nazi.
I mean that everybody today is filled with the idea of tyranny and there's a lot of brutality in every mind today. I mean, that's the inheritance of the Nazis. I say that in one or two poems, that in a certain way the Nazis won. It's true, we beat them and they were defeated, but the Nazi idea of the monolith, of the totalitarian idea that everybody must be like they are, that you find on the side of the liberals, on the side of the communists, on the side of the right wing, on the left wing. You find this quality of intolerance, of suppression, of something that does not admit its own weakness, something that does not look inward. This I find everywhere.
What do you propose then?
Well, I don't propose anything except for my own, you know, I'd like to survive myself, but, you know, I don't think that, who do we fight? There's only one person, there's only one people that we can fight, and that's to fight ourselves and overcome our own, the Nazi in ourselves, because it's everywhere.
There's another point. In the song Your Revolution, you sing, in this furnace, I ask you now to venture. It's a question. I don't understand it.
That's
What do you mean?
That's the furnace of the self. That is to really examine what your own greed and your own appetite and your own ambition and what you're really willing to do and your own ruthlessness. That's what I mean to really examine. That, to my mind, is the appropriate study for man today.
There's another point, and that is that you have been very fascinated by esoterism. In your book, you're talking about Kabbalah. You have a side about alchemy. You even used the Ouroboros in one of your songs. You talk about magic. So, what are you really looking in this, like Freud says, mud of obscurity?
Well, if I have been obscure, then I'm guilty of obscurity, but I never meant it for obscurity's sake. I mean that the alchemical process is the process of change.
Of individuation.
Yes, of interior change, of changing lead to gold. But that is just an allegory of changing the base emotions and feeling into something that is higher.
That has Jung written.
Pardon?
Jung has that written.
Jung has it, yeah.
But now you see what has become of him. He has sympathized with the Nazis.
Yeah, well...
So it's a failure. To take
sometimes a man stands in the way of his work. Sometimes a man stands in the way. What he did personally, the decisions a man makes to save himself or his own personal ambition, you can't condemn all the visions of alchemy, this notion of being able to change just because one man who wasn't really even an alchemist, who was just a scholar, just a theoretician really, he didn't do it himself. He just wrote about it, but he's not an alchemist, just a scientist who chose the wrong side. He's not perfect. You can't condemn the things he wrote about it because he himself made a certain kind of choice.
In your song, The Word on the Wire, you say, I've tried in my way to be free. Free? What do you mean with free?
What do you mean?
Now I ask you, what do you mean? That there are words that I don't understand because everywhere we go we are bound. So...
But it just says like a bird on the wire. In other words, that kind of freedom, like a drunk in a midnight choir, that kind of freedom. We know that there are moments of pure experience that are the same as freedom. How can you be free from the wind?
You can.
Can't you?
No.
Depends. How can you be free from God? How can you be free from the sea? How can you be free from the sunset?
But you're talking a lot about God. Perhaps it is a too personal question. But it is important for you. In what way?
That's not very important.
You say, somewhere in your book, The Beautiful News, is talking God is alive.
Well, I know that the Spirit is alive. I know that the foundation of life...
How do you know that?
I don't. It's not something I want to argue about. One either feels that there is a foundation to love and a foundation to hate, a foundation to existence. I don't mean some idea. I'm talking about the foundation, the experience of the foundation. If you haven't had the experience of the foundation of this particular existence, then you can't know what I'm talking about. If you've had the experience of the foundation, it's just like, when you look up at a building, if you think it just exists up there without sinking the thing into the ground, it doesn't rest on anything, but it does. All this rests on something. What does it rest on? What does all this rest upon?
Perhaps another thing, in a song you dedicated to Janis Joplin, you said in the concert.
Yeah.
You say, This is love by the workers and songs. So I think you must have another idea about love.
Well, that's an ironic idea, I say.
What is an irony?
I say that we were there in this bed and it was just a moment, but in those days that was called love for the workers in song. Those of us that were making the song.
But when I hear a song like Sisters of Mercy, the thing you sing in the song, I mean, there is a certain kind of love.
It's another kind. We weren't lovers like that, but even if we were, it would still be all right.
So what's love when that's called love by workers and songs? You must have another idea about it.
It's like an embrace. When you embrace somebody, you know what that is. When you stop embracing, when you come apart and somebody asks you, what was that? Well, you can say it was many things. You could say it was loneliness, you could say it was love, you could say it was society brought us together, you could say it was an accident. But in the midst of the embrace, when it happens, you don't ask any questions about it. So it is with the song. I mean, you know what the song means. It's when you step outside of the song, you say, what does it mean? You bring in other mechanical faculties, other approaches, and you say, like, what does it all mean? But you know what it means. You take the first drag on your cigarette, you know what that means. If somebody says to you, what are you doing? Are you inhaling nicotine? Are you stopping your nervousness? Are you passing time? But anybody who knows what it is to take a drag on a cigarette, they don't ask themselves. That's pure experience. That's what music is, and that's all that it is about. When you start asking other questions about it, well, you bring in all sorts of parts of your mind that are really quite useless in that particular moment.
You're singing. When I hear a song like the Sisters of Mercy and so on, there is a certain happiness. But in an interview you did about your record, you say the critics can stand that I'm also happy. So I don't understand. Do you disagree with the happiness you had then and the happiness? Yeah, there are several kinds of happiness. So.
I think so.
But you don't disagree with previous?
Well, you say a lot of things, and it's very hard to stand by something that you said yesterday. You may say, God, this is a very hot day. I really feel very hot. I mean, you can't come in a week and say, like, you always feel hot on Tuesday. You say a lot of things, and you can't really stand by everything you say. It changes. If a song works, if it has its own power and its own truth, it's a different kind of truth than an intellectual truth. It's a truth of experience. And your experience always changes. You don't always have the same experience. In fact, you never have the same experience. You only have the same experience once. It's like fingerprints, it's like snowflakes. They never repeat themselves. Nothing is ever the same. You take a song and you make a house for an experience, and that's it. There's really nothing much you can say about it. I can't give you the theory of a song and stand by it and say that's what I am, that's what I do, and I don't do anything else. It's like experience, and that changes all the time.
When I have seen now several concerts of yours, when I see the first concert you did 4 years ago, I have the impression that then you were creating a kind of myth of despair. I have the impression, but everything you did, and the musicians tried to give the mood.
Right.
But now when I see your stage, it's really, there are nice arrangements of your songs. Somewhere there's lacking a certain kind of mood.
Well, everything I do carefully. And I understand exactly what you mean, but I'm interested in indicating some possibility of development, of some way that a man can change and a man can go, because there's no way that you can live in despair. I'm trying to indicate that there is a way that a man grows up and tries to change his life or take responsibility for his life, for his mistakes, for his choices. And that's the feeling I would like to have in my work now.
You say somewhere in your book, The Favorite Game, poetry is a verdict, and it's not an occupation. So what's your verdict now, because in 2 years or more, we haven't heard no songs, no more lyrics, no more books. So may I ask you what's your verdict at this time?
Myself? Well, I feel okay. I just finished a book, but I'm not going to publish it. But it's finished, it's there. And, the verdict is not for yourself to give. Everybody has their own verdict for themselves. When I say the poetry is a verdict, I mean that there are many people that call themselves poets, and they write lines that don't come to the end of the page. But that doesn't make a man a poet. A poet is a verdict that other people make about his work. That is, if it has a certain quality of communication. We say that man is a poet, a certain quality. It doesn't have to satisfy philosophical regulations or truthful regulations. It's a special kind of experience that has to take place in the work. And if that takes place, then they say he's a poet. Well, whether they're going to say that about me or not, it really doesn't matter. I keep on doing my work. Whether they call me a poet or not is their problem.
But in an interview in the Melody, you say, recently, 2 weeks ago, that you have only a small vision against the vision of Solzhenitsyn. What do you mean by small vision?
I mean that there are great...
I have the impression that you have a great vision.
I mean that there are great writers in the world. I mean, I'm not trying to be modest. I mean there are great writers that have lived. There's Tolstoy, there's Dostoevsky, there's Shakespeare. I know that I'm a minor poet. I mean, any man who works in this thing knows that. I know my grasp is small, it's limited, it has its own tiny excellence. But it's not, I'm not in that big league. I know that.
What was that big league? Take Solzhenitsyn. He writes against all what socialism. He confuses all what socialism with communism, with the concentration camps and so on in Russia. It's not great.
I don't think he's confused. He lived through it. He knows what it's about.
But it's everywhere. It's the same in the United States.
No. Russia's not the same as the United States. I've spoken to a lot of Russians. I met them in Israel when I was there. People had come out to the country. It's not the same as the United States. The United States is a very different experience than Russia. I'm not saying the United States is perfect, but in the United States today, really great experiments are taking place. It's very open and very free and very crazy. And there's many terrible things and many wonderful things. It's an open society. It's in a tremendous state of change and flux. The Soviet Union is very monolithic. People can't publish their novels, they can't show their paintings, they can't talk about the things they want to talk about, they can't practice their religion. It's a very different society, and I think people are very wrong to believe that Russia or the United States are about the same thing. They aren't. And everybody who's come out of Russia, they say that to us. They say, don't be fooled. What is going on in Russia, don't repeat this. Don't embrace a Russian version of socialism, because it's very, very oppressive. And Russia is an oppressive society, and America is not. America oppresses some of its poor, but also the poor have a chance to change their situation.
I'll tell you why I consider you as a rather great poet.
I never considered you as a prophet or an oracle of jealousy, but we were living with some friends together in the fall. We were living in a certain way, in a kind of an adventure. We were not knowing what we were doing, but when we heard your song, we read your poems. You rationalized poems, and that's because me and my friends think that your work has been very important for us. Because you said what we were doing. Some parts, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleased to be able to be useful. I would like to be useful. I would like my work to be useful.
And there's another point where we have freed you and Camille together. And you say somewhere to take one step aside and it comes up to well, that's coming.
Yeah, I love Kevin. I love his spirit.
But are you still in his mind that's coming?
I don't think so. But I love his spirit. You know, you can, it's like food for me, you know, Kevin was food at a certain time. Maybe there's another time when I'll go back and study him. But now I feel that he doesn't speak about many things, many complexities that touch me now.
And who's talking now about complexity?
Who is speaking about them? I don't know. In any bar I hear it, you know, the guy next to me drinking, you know. I don't know about the writers. I don't know if they're speaking about it. I can see it in your face, you know. I see it in many people. But there is a hunger for another vision of this complexity. It's not just Nazism, communism, capitalism, socialism, atheism, religion. These things there's a new complexity that has to be affirmed. You know, and I don't know who's doing it.
Why don't you write them?
Well, I'm trying to do my best in it, you know, but I haven't done anything in that way that satisfies me yet, but I would like to.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. It was nice talking to you.
Hope to see you again.
I hope so.
From work-wise situation.
Anytime I'm around, just come backstage. Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Can I send to you the results of
Yeah, please.
Do I have to dance all night? Do I have to dance all night? Who tell me bird of paradise? Do I have to dance all night?